And now,
it's 10 a.m.
let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. Jake Scott, Ben Anderson. Happy Monday after the holidays to you all. We can celebrate. We need fireworks for this day.
Okay, why?
The holidays are over.
Oh, okay, that reason. Okay, yeah. It does feel like we're officially back.
Yeah, they're in the rear view, even though
kids aren't in school till tomorrow.
You know, I really didn't stop working throughout all of it, but
right.
Yeah, like most kids are back at school today. I think Granite might be the only one that's out until tomorrow.
But I'm with you today. Even last night, going to bed, getting up this morning, it felt like we're back to normal.
Honestly, I'm a really routine-oriented fella, and it's like, okay, back to the routine.
Yeah.
It's nice. Even though, yes, my 7-year-old does have one more day technically, but she's going skiing with Grandpa, so we're good.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Gray day. Not a lot of light up there.
Oh, she doesn't care.
But good for her.
She doesn't care about weather conditions in the slightest. I'm so proud of her. In her several years of skiing now, she has never complained about being cold once. And she's skied in some days that you could have complained about being cold.
Yeah.
So maybe I'd like to take some credit and her mother for dressing her appropriately, but still, it gets cold out there.
You were going to go skiing yesterday. There was a little bit of a quagmire as you had an early basketball game.
I did, yes.
And you were also trying to get the kids up skiing.
Which we did technically accomplish that.
Technically?
Well, okay, so we're taking my 3-year-old for the first time.
Okay.
And so
Lessons?
No.
Okay.
It was just going to be me on the bunny hill and
leaning over and holding her.
The what do they call it? Magic carpet. And we were going to, see how it went. But the canyon, because of the snow that we got on Saturday, the canyon closed overnight, Saturday to Sunday, so they could,
sure,
make the road safe. How dare they? But they were going to open up the canyon at 8:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. So we thought, all right, well, we're up early anyway. We'll get going around 7:30 and we'll hang out in line for an hour. And then at 8:30 when they open the canyon, hopefully, we'll we'll get up the canyon. So, Ben, we executed that plan. But here's the downside. And Christian, when I told him this story, he's not really familiar with the the map around there. So
sure.
If people aren't, I apologize. But we're going south on Wasatch Boulevard toward Little Common Canyon. We're going up to Snowbird.
Past the golf course.
So we pass the 7-Eleven.
Uh-huh.
Get basically to where the Canyon Racket Club used to be.
Okay.
And that's where we come to a dead stop.
Yeah.
So we're 10 miles away from the mouth of the canyon.
Not even particularly close to.
Not even close.
The resort, much less the mouth of the canyon.
Yeah, right. We were going to try. I thought we'd get, I knew there'd be a line. The Powhounds were out, I knew there'd be a line. But to be backed up that far, an hour before it's even supposed to, I was like, oh, okay. We're in.
We're in for it.
We're in for it. So we sat there. The canyon opened at 8:45. So I was like, okay, a little relief. The canyon's open.
Yeah.
We're going to be moving soon. We didn't budge for another hour.
Ugh.
We didn't move for another hour.
Yeah.
And then we're just crawling, We didn't hit Snowbird parking lot until 11 a.m. And we had kids. My 3-year-old was like, Dad, I got to go potty. And I said, you know what, honey? I don't know what to tell you because we can't.
Hope you brought your New Year's Eve diaper.
We can't really do anything about that right now. Yeah. So hold it.
Right.
And hold it.
Yeah.
And so, of course, when we hit the top of the ski resort, we're scrambling to get stuff because we've got it's not like casually pulling on your boots or whatever. We're scrambling to get to the bathroom. And then the 3-year-old still needs me to hold her up most of the time.
Right.
And so and she had an epic meltdown, which actually made it so we left at a reasonable time.
Fine. We're leaving. Fine. Happy to do it.
She did a few runs.
Yeah.
And my 7-year-old had a good time, so whatever. But I mean, I'm just not a good waiter. I'm just not being patient.
Yeah.
It's just not me. You know what I mean? And so it was so painful. And so shout out to all my brothers and sisters in traffic out there. Can I point out something semi-political, though?
Uh-huh.
There's a bunch of signs on the way to Little Cottonwood Canyon that say, like, say no to the gondola and no
Right.
to the gondola and all this stuff. And it's like, as I'm sitting there creeping past it, and I am by no expert on this topic, so
Sure.
don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But as I'm creeping past the signage, I'm thinking to myself, I don't think your message is going to land.
It's not going to land. When I've been looking at this same sign for 45 straight minutes, unmoved, maybe a people mover is a good idea.
Or something.
Maybe anything else is a good idea.
I don't know.
I had the exact same thought when you were telling your story, which is I don't know anything about the argument. I generally know if two people are arguing against the same side, they're probably both wrong. You know what I mean? There has to be a solution, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be a solution of some type, and clearly it needs one. So I'm glad they're doing something. I'm glad because they are building it, right?
I think so.
So I'm glad they're doing something because that's untenable, and I'm sure it has to do with the fact that half the ski resorts are on strike right now. At least
That's only Park City, so it didn't affect this. No,
Park City's enormous.
Once we got to the resort, by the way, shout out to Snowbird. We had a fine experience from
So,
an operational standpoint.
Maybe people aren't going to wait in the long lines at Park City right now, so they are going to other resorts, which is backing everything up. I'm sure it's all tied together, plus it was a powder day. But, yeah, we just got to get people up and down that canyon.
Well, I mean, the Olympics are coming back. O2 put this whole scene on the map, and so that increased the popularity. And then these passes, which are really great, and not to get too sidetracked on a Monday. But yeah, Icon, the Vail one is called Epic, I think.
Yeah.
But it opens the door to all these different resorts.
Right.
And really, people like who live in Colorado are buying Icon passes because they live by Aspen. And so they go to Aspen Snowmass or whatever. But then you go, oh, my buddies do this. Oh, it's super easy. Let's plan a trip to Snowbird.
Right.
You know, and all of a sudden, if you bought a season's pass back in the day, Ben, you were married to that resort, right?
Right.
And so now people can just have access to all these different resorts, and it's made it even more popular. And yeah, the parking's a nightmare up there. And they have to, canyon avalanche maintenance is not something that you can just not do. So, there's got to be something. Because I can't imagine the people that live in that neighborhood. How do you get around?
Right.
How do you go to the store?
Yeah,
I've got to go get a loaf of bread this morning.
Can't
it's
leave.
like, oh, never mind. We're stuck here until this thing clears out at noon.
Can't leave. Yeah. Anyways, well, I'm glad you made it up, and then you made it back for the game.
I did, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because I know the Jazz won, but that was unwatchable. And if you don't mind, Ben, this is where I wanted to start because I had a long off-air conversation with Jamil and Coach Lacombe. If we want to get into the why are the NBA ratings dropping? It's that.
I totally agree.
It is that. It is that you have no idea who's going to play night to night. Teams are trying to lose actively. It's just that game was. I didn't know who was playing. You didn't either. We watched this
right. Oh, I
every
legitimately.
night, and I'm not talking about the Jazz. More the Magic, but no idea. What's his name for the Magic was playing in his fourth game. He was a featured player.
A guy named Queen, who I had literally never heard of this player. And I'm an NBA junkie. I watch every team. I watch basketball every single night. I mean, 7 nights a week, I watch at least probably 2.5 quarters of basketball. And if you were to say, in the aggregate of game, I watch probably a game and a half a night. I watch a ton of basketball, too much. And I'm with you. I'd never heard of this person in my life before. And, to the point where Anthony Black, and I never even found the story. Anthony Black was a lottery pick by the Magic 2 years ago.
Yep.
Had been hurt, was cleared to return to the floor, and then still just didn't play.
DNP'd, yeah.
So even to your point of they didn't even play. The Magic didn't even play guys that were available to play
because the Magic didn't care about that game.
But they actually weirdly could benefit from winning that game because they still are the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. They are trying to win games, but I'm with you. They certainly did not run out their best product, and I totally get that Franz Wagner's actually hurt, Paolo's actually hurt. Mo Wagner's actually hurt. But, they didn't even put out some of the guys that weren't hurt.
they don't. The Magic had quote unquote trying to win games. They're in fourth place in the Eastern Conference. The playoffs don't start tomorrow.
Right.
A random game in January doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
So if you punt it into the stands, who cares? And it's amazing that they could out-tank the Jazz, who benched all of their relevant players pretty much.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say all. That's an insult to some.
But John Collins didn't play. Jordan Clarkson didn't play. Lowry Markkanen didn't play. Keontae George didn't play.
And
3 starters and 4 of your top 6 players.
And it was various reasons. Jordan Clarkson came up lame against Miami. Plantar fascia, I think. John Collins was personal reasons.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. You never know.
I know, and that's always delicate.
Right. Yeah, very, very legit. I just assume there is something.
See, I don't. And that's unfair, so I don't want to, wave it around on the radio. But no, I think they saw a shorthanded Magic team and thought, oh, we just won.
Yeah. We're not trying to win.
We need to find a way to sink this one. And we certainly don't need to play all our players and win by 25. So I don't know. I mean, that's just what I assume.
I'm with you. I had the same feeling when I saw the injury report last night was, oh, man, the Jazz are trying to make up for beating Miami.
Right.
And look, I wrote about it last night because it is part of the truth of the season. The Jazz have to make up those wins with losses. If your goal, and the Jazz clearly at this point in the season, when you only have 9 wins as of January 6th and you only had 7 as of January 1st, it really does not behoove you to win games the rest of the season. It doesn't. It doesn't make you better. It's not long term. You are better off losing more games and adding more talent in the draft. So when you win 2 games back to back, as icky and awkward as it is, it hurts you to win games like the Jazz did over the weekend. And every Jazz fan on my Twitter page was saying the same thing. I saw a bunch of it. I had this weird feeling watching the games. It's why the Jazz put out that injury report that they put out. To lose games. So when you win, it gives you that awkward feeling. And I get it's totally backwards and it feels strange. And it looks like now over the next week when you've got Charlotte, you've got 2 games against New Orleans, you've got Brooklyn, you probably need to lose every single one of those games to make up for the work you did over the weekend, which is, again, antithetical to what we have tried to sell what sports are about.
I think you should tell those fans, Ben, to simmer down. Simmer down. I refuse to get lost in living and dying with every win and loss when the Jazz or whoever I root for is actually trying to win. I refuse to do the same in this circumstance. Listen, Ben, they are going to trade everyone they can possibly trade by the deadline, and they are going to lose a zillion games down the stretch. And you know what? If they don't end up in the bottom 3, it doesn't matter because everything is so flat. It doesn't matter. Can you tell me that you would think that the Jazz are in danger, as crazy as that sounds, as being a mediocre team this year? No. So if they finish it, maybe if they don't finish in the bottom 3, it'll be the bottom 4 or the bottom 5, where the odds are pretty much identical. Detroit had the worst team record in the league. How many years in a row? 3? And
ended up 5th every time.
So,
right. No.
So why would I get caught up in how dare you beat Orlando? It does. Stop it. Simmer down.
I am with you on that front.
How do people live their life that way? Do they approach everyday situations as if the world's over because I'm stuck in traffic trying to get up the dang canyon and my kid has to go to the bathroom? That's it. How could I go on?
Yeah, right.
I'm serious. Do people live their lives that way as opposed to just being like, oh, okay, that was an ugly game full of no talent. Well, that's the reason to hate on that particular game.
Yes, because as we've talked about a lot, whether it's social media or whatever it is, we look at every ripple as a tidal wave because we see everything at eye level and we have a hard time stepping back. And to your point, what did you say about Orlando? Why did they not care about winning the game last night? Because the playoffs don't start today. So they didn't care about last night. In fact, they did care a little bit about today because they played the Knicks tonight, so they were probably resting Anthony Black so he wasn't coming back from an injury on the second night of it back-to-back. Neither here nor there. The Jazz, while I assure you are not probably that excited that they won back-to-back games because they do want to finish with one of the worst records in the NBA, also recognize that they have 49 games or whatever it is left in the season, 48 games left in the season, and will lose plenty of games to be in this conversation to be one of the 2 or 3 worst records. And again, to the point, while you don't want to necessarily beat good teams, it's better than beating Charlotte. It's better than beating New Orleans because then you gain a game and they lose a game. So if you do want to make up these types of games, it's actually not that difficult to do. So I don't suspect there's a lot of panic right now within the Jazz front office about winning too many games, nor do I feel like they're going to start pulling the plug and trading players at 10 cents on the dollar just so they avoid more wins like this.
No, that's ridiculous. But they will make trades.
Yeah, they will.
We talked on Saturday night at great length, and maybe we can save this for top 3 stories or something, but the whole Jimmy Butler fiasco in Miami and the ripple effects that it could have in the NBA, because I do find that interesting. But the Jazz, yeah, we can get into this. The Jazz will never trade for Jimmy Butler, but the odds of them being facilitators in a certain circumstance, I would say would be quite high.
Yeah, they are one of the teams that has the ability to facilitate trades. Brooklyn can, Detroit can, and the Jazz can. Those are kind of the 3 teams that are up there that will be helping teams wheel and deal.
But in the stupid tank standings, the Jazz have the 5th worst record in the league.
Yeah.
They are a game and a half behind Toronto.
Yeah.
They are 2 games in front of Portland.
What is Charlotte?
And
Charlotte has 5 wins, and Washington has 5 wins? What, Washington has 5?
Washington has 6.
Okay.
The Pelicans 7. The Hornets 7. The Raptors 8. The Jazz 9. Portland 12. Brooklyn 13. Philadelphia 14. Phoenix 15. So once you get to Philly, you get to teams that are trying to
Jazz
win.
aren't going to catch anyone in front of them. Make no mistake about it. They're at 9. The Jazz aren't going to catch anyone in front of them. So I don't think they are going to finish any worse than the 5th worst record in the NBA.
So your response on the snap talk to those people should be, simmer down.
Chill.
Simmer down.
Yeah. And again, you are 6 wins is the fewest in the NBA right now?
6.
Like, even the Wizards, as atrocious as they are going to accidentally win 2 out of 3 at some point.
They're 3-7 in their last 10.
Right. It just happens. You just do. NBA teams do. The Jazz didn't plan on beating the Orlando Magic.
No.
The Magic just happened to be resting everybody on that night. And you caught the Miami Heat at their highest point of turmoil in the last 5 years.
Listen,
it just happens.
This is why the NBA is losing ratings, because every team mails it in frequently.
At some point, yeah.
Not even at some point, not even like, oh, that happened once, but like
couple times a month.
once a week.
Yeah.
And you never know when you're going to get that team mailing it in. And the NBA's solutions to all of this have sucked. Like, oh, you can mail it in all you want, just don't mail it in on national TV. What kind of standard is that? And teams still mail it in on national TV because I about said a phrase I shouldn't have. Nice guys like us don't want to call out Ben Simmons for saying he's having mental whatever, or somebody who has personal issues, or like, because we don't want it. Nobody wants to do that, so they hide behind it, which is gross. And again, I'm not saying the Jazz did that with John Collins, because we have to be delicate about this, but it's taken advantage of. And if it's not mental issues or personal reasons, it's Mateau.
Yeah, back spasms.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the solution is you've got to figure out a way to make people care about this, including the fans, and all their solutions suck. And I know Locke loves the in-season tournament, and I even kind of like the concept, but it doesn't fix anything.
No, it doesn't. But the problem, the issue here for the NBA is its greatest strength is also what leads to this weakness, which is its strength is it has 82 games. It has 82 different nights to tune in. That brings in a ton of money. Jimmy Butler makes $49 million a year. Like, the myth about NBA ratings is that, like, the league is in a bad spot. League's fine. League's never been better. They just signed a $70 billion TV deal. $70 billion. They're fine. Nobody cares. Everyone's getting rich. The owners are getting rich. The players are getting rich. And they're not just getting rich, they're getting richer. Beyond their wildest dreams. They're the richest league on an individual basis that exists on the planet. The players make more than any other league. The owners make more. Well, maybe not more than any other league, but the owners are making tons of money right now. So everyone's fine. And it's because you have 82 games to be on TV.
Well,
but the problem is when you play 82 games, you don't have to play every night.
But the point is it hasn't been a problem before, or as much of a problem. That's why it's a story. I don't care about people getting rich. It's what's going on with the product. And if they don't care about they're foolish. I think they do care, but I think all their solutions suck. So,
and not to get this is too big, we're at the end of the segment. I think there might be an oversaturation, which I'm happy to have. Again, like I said, I watch 6 quarters of NBA basketball a night at least. That's not even counting Jazz games. I watch a ton of basketball. So I'm glad that it's on every night. But because it's on every night, it's not hard to find. How many NFL games are actually on a week that you can watch?
Fine, but all those excuses let off the hook the point that these guys don't play and don't care.
I'm with you. I do think that rest is certainly at an all-time high. I'm not going to argue against that. That's very clearly the case.
Well, listen, it's a societal problem as much as it is an NBA problem. Because, okay, I'll give you an example. Monster Jam was in the arena this weekend, which just added to my... Because nothing's more fun than doing a radio show with monster trucks roaring in the background the whole time. It's just wonderful. But with Monster Jam, and by the way, it's packed. People love it. I'm not trying to hate on it. It just makes my job more difficult. Has standings. Did you know that?
I've been to Monster Jam. So, yes, I have found that they have standings.
They have standings that goes from venue to venue to venue or whatever. And it's a running thing, and there's a season and all this stuff. Do you think anybody in that building gave a good god dang who's number one in those standings? No. Nobody cares.
Right.
Everybody just wants to see the Gravedigger Mash.
Right.
And the other thing is just kind of a story for the show, you know? That used to be the NBA. It was a traveling show. You went to the games. The players poured it on because they had to.
Yeah.
To build the league, and it was every game. And then the standings were kind of a sideshow, and the playoffs they didn't even used to put on TV. You know what I mean? They were like tape delayed and stuff. But now, the standings, the playoff, the championship have become the only thing that matters. That's it.
Yeah.
But that is 7 games max in June.
Right.
So you take the emphasis off everything else and then expect people to continue to care. It's insulting. I think, and I'm going to do damage to my own job. As a ticket payer, I would demand I demand satisfaction.
Yeah.
And it's why I will give the NBA credit. They're trying to improve the in-game experience from a concession standpoint, from visualization, from
entertainment,
the experience. They've done a lot of really good things. So I do give them credit. You get more for your ticket than you used to. You used to get to go to the game and eat some terrible cardboard box pizza, and that's it.
Right.
You know?
It's much more of an event now.
It's much more of an event now. So there are 2 sides to every coin. But I want the players to care. That's the point. I want to care about the game.
Sure.
And if the players don't care about the game, why should I care about the game?
And the players don't get rewarded for caring. Because Colin Sexton plays every single night. And guess what was the number one thing in my tweets last night other than, this was a bad win? Jazz got to trade Colin Sexton. Got to get rid of Colin. Yeah. Because he plays too much that he helps your team win.
The guy who plays his brains out every night and is absolutely an energy setter and a great example for young players. Yeah. And not to mention a guy that totally changed his game in an unselfish way because he's coachable. Yeah, let's part ways with that guy. Great idea. It's silly.
Yeah, it is.
It's silly.
It's counterintuitive.
And I'm not even saying those people are wrong because Colin Sexton helps you win.
Right. But the system rewards you for losing. It does.
Ridiculous. And I'm not going to get caught up in the day-to-day of it. I'm not.
Yeah.
Brice Sensabaugh is playing like a man possessed.
Yeah, and
what are you going to do? Go, hey, Brice, tone it down.
We need to dive more into that aspect of it because that changes the conversation as well.
All right, stay tuned. Jake and Ben, we'll get to top 3 stories of the day coming up next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
Connor Pay joins us here on JJ and Alex.
Kalani's culture is starting to take form. This culture of love and learn and belief. Love will take you a lot farther than fear ever will. The hard part is that genuine love for your teammates is really hard to manufacture. I think that's what we were able to do this year. There was a genuine desire to be better for your teammates. And that's one of the unique things about coming to BYU. I don't think there's very many other programs in the country that are built that way. I hope the younger leaders on the team can kind of take what we've done this year and build on it, and that culture can continue to grow because I think it's going to build a fantastic program. Not just one great team, but a great program. That's where BYU's headed.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's time to break down the biggest stories of the day. This is the top 3 stories of the day on KSLSports.com. 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Want to remind you to nominate the Youth Sports Volunteer for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at KSLSports.com/contest and listen every Thursday to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week, sponsored by Hercules First Federal Credit Union and Beehive Meals. Time for the top 3 stories of the day, KSLSports.com. That is brought to you by our friends at J. Brooks Jewelers. 2 locations, one on Winchester Street across from Fashion Place Mall, the other at Traverse Mountain in Lehigh. All right, Christian, where are we starting today?
Number 1, the NFL playoffs. They're all set.
He does not have juice that Caleb Williams has. Caleb looked pretty special.
Oh, and it comes back to Hard Knocks.
He did, man.
And it comes back to Ben consuming propaganda.
He's got that juice you're looking for.
Juice.
I didn't feel
Give
that.
me a break.
I didn't feel that from Bo Picks.
Oh, you didn't feel it.
I've been waiting to
Been
play
sitting on
that all season.
Do we have a date on that?
Picks.
That was in August.
Bo Nix has been obviously terrific and was great again. Now, the Chiefs weren't exactly out there playing their stars, but he was awesome again yesterday.
They made the playoffs.
Yeah, they made the playoffs. Unbelievable.
They stunk last year.
They did.
Stunk for 9 years.
So 8 years without playoffs. I thought about it. The last time the Broncos made the playoffs, I was a sophomore in high school. I didn't even have my driver's license yet.
And Bo Picks comes in and lights up the world, Ben. Taking the Donks into the playoffs. Now, they're probably going to get smoked by the Bills. But how did Fingernails do?
Didn't make the playoffs. Let's see. What did Bo Nix finish his rookie season with? I've got it pulled up. 3,700 yards, 29 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and really came on not even late in the season because he was pretty awful to start the year. But, man, he picked it up and then ran with it and has turned into an excellent quarterback. Good for him. He's really done a terrific job this year. And there's nothing, again, as much as we rip on teams selecting quarterbacks in the first round, when you find a guy, there's simply nothing more valuable in all of sports than being an NFL team that finds the quarterback. And look, this stuff changes quickly, but if Bo Nix is a franchise guy, the Broncos are going to be in the situation for a really long time. This won't be the first or the last time for the next 8 years that they make the playoffs. They will be around.
Now, I will caution Christian and now Ben. We watched another quarterback who was deemed God's gift to football yesterday in Carson Wentz. And how did that work out? So Bo Picks needs to keep his eye on the ball to make sure that he does not, it's easy to believe your own headlines and all of that, but, it's not, the book has not been written. Because Carson Wentz has no idea how to play football. It's pretty amazing that he's still getting a paycheck for doing it. Now, did he forget how to play football, or was he never good in the first place?
Well, he had a bunch of injuries too, but yeah, probably a little bit of both. Probably overhyped too early on. Where was he? The Eagles?
Yep.
That was his first start.
With a dang all-star team.
Yeah, right. And got a little bit overhyped, got hurt, and then certainly never bounced back to being the same guy.
Yeah.
Even now with another all-star team, and I know, again, not everyone was playing last night, but he's never regained that magic.
This is what will happen to Brock Purdy. Like, he's not God's gift to football.
Correct.
He's just playing on an all-star team.
Jimmy Garoppolo. Looked awesome filling in for Tom Brady.
Sure did.
As soon as the All-Stars were gone or he was playing on a different team, he did not look awesome.
Now, I'm not convinced that Denver is necessarily an all-star team, which is probably a good sign for Bo Picks. Love seeing Vele tear it up, though.
Yeah, good for him.
Like half the team, speaking of the Broncos, are like local players, so good for them. But the rest of the NFL playoff, Ben, so the Donks will take on the Bills, the Steelers, and the Ravens, which is, a classic rivalry.
A-plus game, yeah. Best game of the weekend by far.
And the Chargers-Texans. And then in the NFC side of things, you've got the Rams and the Vikings. The Vikings lost to the Lions, so they do not get they fall all the way to the 5 seed and take on the Rams. The Bucks are going up against the Commies. And the Packers take on the Eagles.
Hopefully Jordan Love's elbow's okay. The coach said he could have come back and played if he needed to, but he did get banged up a little bit in that game. So having to go and play at the Eagles is a very difficult draw, despite the fact that Green Bay had a great year. I thought the Vikings-Lions game last night was miserable, considering it was maybe the biggest game of the regular season. It had huge implications for the number 1 seed. And the bye week in the first round of the playoffs, and the Vikings basically no-showed. But shout out to the Lions for winning the first top seed, I think in franchise history, right? First time they've ever done that. So that's pretty awesome for them. Washington-Tampa Bay is a very funny game. Not a terrific game, but someone's got to advance. And then, Steelers-Ravens. Awesome game.
Going back to Minnesota, I think Sam Darnold might have lost himself a lot of money.
Yeah, he might have.
Yeah, he didn't look good. Speaking of rebounding with an all-star team, if you're throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson,
you're going to look good.
You're going to look pretty good.
But they're going to say the same thing where, hey, we've got J.J. McCarthy, who we bet can probably also identify Justin Jefferson in a crowd and throw the ball to him and hope it works. And they also have Jordan Addison. Like, that team is stacked. The team is loaded.
If they're smart, they will let J.J. McCarthy marinate for a minute.
I agree, and maybe they just even do what Atlanta did, which is Atlanta had Kirk for the first 10 games of the season, and then they switched over to Michael Penix. It wasn't even that early. It was like 14 games.
See, the problem with that, though, is they wasted a lot of money on Kirk Cousins.
They wasted too much money on him.
That's what the franchise tag is for.
But yeah,
franchise Darnold.
Yeah, you
keep
give him 1 year.
Force him to stay 1 year.
And then you dump him like a sack of doorknobs as soon as you're done with him, which I think they will.
By the way, I predicted Baker Mayfield's failure from the time, speaking of you're talking about Bo Picks, I never thought Baker Mayfield was good or that he would make it in the NFL. He has become one of my absolute favorite stories.
No question about it.
Talking about a dude that was humbled by experience and then comes back in a good situation with a good coach, with the Bucs, with a good receiver in Mike Evans. And
Hall of Famer, yeah.
Makes the playoffs 2 years in a row. Way to go, Baker Mayfield. And is not obnoxious anymore. I mean, he's still got a little bit of that, but is not. He was so annoying in Cleveland.
He can't change everything about himself because you would lose some of his magic. He's kept the right parts and he's gotten rid of the bad parts, which is, I think, really hard for people to do. Johnny Manziel could never do it.
No.
Johnny, you've got to keep the ego because that allows you to be a great football player. You've got to get rid of some of the nonsense that he was bringing to the field that was a distraction. He's gotten rid of the distractions. He's turned into a great player. Are we still considering Justin Herbert a young quarterback?
No.
No? Okay. I was going to say young quarterback battle between Justin Herbert and C.J. Stroud with the Texans and Chargers. But if
Herbert's not a vet yet, when do you become one?
I like both the Chargers and the Texans just as like a story. So I'm happy that they get to play and one of them gets to advance because I actually want to see both. I want to see more from both of those teams, so I'm glad they're not first-round fodder.
You're right that I don't hate either of those teams, but I do dislike both ownership groups. So
Okay.
I don't find...
You're not rooting for anyone.
No, I don't think so.
We'll see. I sold all my Bills stock. I may have sold it early.
I like the Ravens and I like the Steelers, except I don't like Rusty. So I guess I'm coming in on the Ravens front there.
I always root for the Ravens, and they disappoint me every time. And they have a great year. They've got this awesome downhill running game, and I'm just excited about it. And they just, I'm a huge Lamar believer, and then they still find ways to lose games they have no business losing. So,
do you think Tomlin will be done with the Steelers? I'll tell you, if they do, that's the first major mistake from a coaching standpoint
I would
the
certainly
Steelers
they would never
have
fire
ever
him.
made.
I don't think they would fire him. And in fact, I think they're more likely to go out and try and get like a Kyler Murray or something big and give him more juice to play with. Speaking of quarterbacks with juice, and we'll see if they go in that direction.
I don't buy Kyler Murray either.
He's better than Russell Wilson.
Yeah, well, Justin Fields might be better than Rusty. All right, what's next?
Number 2, Jazz finished this road trip with back-to-back wins. Brice Sensabaugh with a couple of big nights.
So this is the part of the conversation we didn't get to, which I think is really actually the nuance that needs to be discussed when talking about the Jazz winning games. I get if you're a Jazz fan and you're frustrated because a Jordan Clarkson or a John Collins or, hell, even a Drew Eubanks or a Svi Mikhailiuk comes out and lights up the other team and says, okay, you can love those players individually, but they are probably not long-term pieces of the future. So them winning you games right now hurts your draft picks and doesn't actually develop the young guys. If Brice Sensabaugh is developing in-game to a point where he's hanging, what did he score, 61 points or something over? He scored 34 and 27 over 2 nights and wins you games on the road. That's important. That's exactly why you're playing all these young guys, to develop to the point where they can win you games. So if Brice is doing it a little bit ahead of schedule You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have young guys develop into good players while never winning games. It doesn't work that way. So Brice playing and winning you the game as the best player on the floor on back-to-back nights when he is playing with a Bam Adebayo or a Tyler Hero who's out there. I know the Magic really didn't have anyone that was worth talking about, but if he's the best player in those games and winning, that's a win. That's what this is about. That's what developing young players is all about. Them winning you games. And Brice is just doing it maybe a little bit out of order, but at least it's Brice that's doing it.
Okay, I have a little bit different take on it. Let's get to we'll get to it at the top of the 11 o'clock hour. But there's no doubt he was on fire. I think he missed like 3 total threes over the weekend or something bananas like that. And I do think it's a good thing that he's, I don't want to sound mean here, but in shape enough to do that on back-to-back nights. Uh-huh. And again, not to be mean, but a knock on him coming into the league was he wasn't necessarily, he needed to drop some weight, needed to tighten a little bit,
we can talk
get
about
into better shape, and no doubt he's in good enough shape to roast 2 NBA teams back-to-back is a good sign. All right, what is next?
Number 3, the Utah Hockey Club. They lost to the Dallas Stars in overtime.
But did get a big win before that, so they actually played really well against Dallas, who's one of the better teams, record-wise, not necessarily, but talent-wise, they are certainly one of the better teams in the conference. So to come out and beat Calgary 5-3 the way they did when they were down going into the third period on the road, to come back and get the victory, to snap that 5-game losing streak was huge. And then I thought actually just to get a point in Dallas was not a loss. Plus, Krause scored 2 goals against Calgary, and then Michelli scored 2 goals against Dallas, and those guys on that third line had been pretty atrocious. So for them to play well, I think is a good sign, because if those guys start clicking, they're just going to win a lot of games, because the top line's good, the second line's good. If the third line really starts clicking, they're going to be winning games. And you know what? It's been Liam O'Brien getting inserted into that lineup. He's just bringing a ton of energy. And I don't want to say he's become a bit of a joke, but, we've talked a lot about how much money he made himself by coming out at a press conference and giving himself a nickname and yelling, "I'm Spicy Tuna," and fans falling in love with him.
My name's Liam O'Brien. You guys can call me Spicy Tuna.
Despite the fact that he basically is not on the team. Like, he is, but he never plays. For him to insert himself or get inserted into the lineup and bring that energy and it actually help show some value he has. So good for him.
Yeah, there's a physicality to hockey, and you need physical players. So
energy, physicality.
I can buy it. Yeah, absolutely. Good for him.
Wednesday against the reigning Stanley Cup champs, Florida, back here at the Delta Center. Long homestand. Florida, San Jose, New York, Montreal, New York again, or different New York Islanders, and then the Rangers, St. Louis, and then Winnipeg. 7-game homestand for the Clubbies. They got to start winning at home. This might determine whether they're in or out of the playoffs, this next 7-game stretch.
All right, stay tuned. We'll get to more coming up next. Jake and Ben on a Monday, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
It's what you want.
You know, I was babysat until 8th grade. Dolores Arnold used to babysit me every day after school. And
Dolores?
Her husband, yeah.
Like how you got like 220-pound 8th grade hands.
Can we not focus on that?
You walk in like, "Hey, Dolores." Hi, Hans. I think it's funny the thought of a 8th grade Hans Olsen probably pushing 2 bills, sitting in and being babysat.
You guys let me know when you're done so I can finish my story.
Tell us more about Dolores.
Anyways, her husband, Don, liked MASH.
Sitting next to Don on the couch watching MASH.
Hey, Don, can I borrow your shaver?
Catch Hans and Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. What's that? Whether it's the Jazz, Utes, Cougars, or Aggies, these guys have got you covered.
Time to eat, fellas.
You're locked on to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
1, 2, 3, move it.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Join Hans and Scotty G coming up today at RGS Exteriors from noon to 3, 4235 Farm Road in West Jordan. RGS, they're very talented at a lot of things, but I've had them look at my gutters. Have you ever had gutter problems, Ben? It's truly an inconvenient problem.
I believe it. Luckily, I've had such small homes my whole life that it's easy to clean the gutters. You can basically step on all of my roofs. They're low and not all that fancy or steep.
Well, it turns out that ice does a lot of damage
It
when
does,
it's
yeah.
in the wrong place.
Yeah. Oh, I noticed in my gutter the other day, standing water. I was like, that's not supposed to be standing.
That's not good.
Yeah, it's supposed to lean and go out the little drain, and it wasn't doing that. So maybe I'll have issues. Shout out to our friends at RGS.
Absolutely. So go hang out with Hans Olsen and Scotty G. Do you have any thoughts? We'll get more into the Jazz and Brice Sensabaugh coming up. We can talk college football and all that fun stuff too. But do you have any thoughts on the Jimmy Butler situation with Miami that we got to see up close and personal as he was served game 1 of his 7-game suspension against the Jazz on Saturday, and the Jazz just hammered the Heat? I wondered if we'd get a motivated Heat team, and we did for about the first, 6 minutes of the game, and then the Jazz just mopped the floor with them.
I kept thinking of Jimmy Butler walking off the floor in Minnesota yelling at former Jazz assistant GM Scott Layden.
Former Jazz GM?
He was
Scott
GM
Layden.
too as well because Frank went to president. By the way, happy birthday, Frank, over the weekend. But, yeah, I thought of Jimmy Butler yelling at Scott Layden, and I'm sure he feels the same way right now. Like, look, you guys are trash without me. I do think he is such a key piece of a culture set, of setting a culture. And Heat, like, their whole thing is Heat culture, if you don't know that. Like, they wrote it on their uniforms. They wrote it on their floor. Like, Heat culture was the thing when really it's Jimmy culture. Jimmy is a very distinct person, a unique person, super serious. He's comical, as is evidenced by the Media Day photo he takes every year, but he is a unique, strong culture person. But without him, it's hard to maintain that culture because he's that type of leader, which is a real positive, but I think can be a real negative because he can turn on his team. So I think they're going to have a hard time replacing him. They do need to trade him. They are a bit of a mess, though, without him. And you know what? To Jimmy's credit, that is a failure of the organization around him that they have kind of taken him for granted that he does so much.
I never bought into the Jimmy Butler is a cancer in the locker room. I never did. Never, and not in Minnesota, not in Philadelphia, certainly not in Philadelphia, and not in Miami really either, other than to say I do think he's got a maverick streak, which often makes people wear thin.
Do you want to explain Maverick Streak?
He's not going to fall in line.
He's willing to go rogue.
He's not automatically just going to fall in line, even when it's not what's best for him or his team.
Yeah.
I think Jim Harbaugh has a bit of that.
Yes.
And those type of personalities often wear thin, and it ends badly. See Jim Harbaugh in San Francisco.
Yes.
So I would believe that about Jimmy. I don't think that's a cancer in the locker room per se. I just think it's a particularly strong-headed person that is willing to go down with the ship.
I agree.
Which isn't always the case. And he's talented and he grabs a lot of headlines. But I think it was untenable between Jimmy and the Heat going back to the offseason. And I think them moving him was just a matter of time. But I'm curious I loved your suggestion of Memphis on Friday. Yeah. I brought that up on the Jazz broadcast. But Locke thinks or has a theory, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, so I hope I'm getting this right, but that Jimmy's value actually isn't great. And that's the reason he's still on the Heat to begin with. And go back to that Shams report, that they were trying to find something. And the teams that would be interested in getting him aren't necessarily going to pay a king's ransom, and the teams that could pay a king's ransom for it aren't going to do it because he doesn't fit on their team in any way, shape, or form. See the Utah Jazz.
Or the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Or the Thunder.
They could use him, but don't need him. They have 5 losses this season.
Right. So why roll the dice on bringing a strong personality into the locker room to see how that goes? Now, maybe it would pay off, maybe it wouldn't. But we're getting back to he's 35, and his production, and he's complaining that he doesn't get the ball enough, so maybe it's that, but I kind of doubt it. I don't think he's the player he necessarily. Do you see Jimmy Butler single-handedly winning playoff series for any team like he did before? I mean, that was his magic.
I think he would really improve the Golden State Warriors. I think that would be like a great fit. I think he'd really improve Denver. Golden State probably doesn't. Denver absolutely does need it. A third team to help facilitate it.
But they're not going to spend.
I don't know if they're going to give up Jonathan Kuminga. Will they give up the trade package that they wouldn't give up for Lowry Markkanen for 2 years of Jimmy?
No.
Probably not. And that's the thing. A lot of teams want these huge Mikal Bridges-like trade packages, which the Knicks gave up 6 first-round draft picks to get Mikal Bridges, who's a non-all-star. So when you have Jimmy Butler, you must think, man, I need 10 first-rounders. I mean, the market is just a little bit goofy in that sense. And I get why it's going to be hard to move him. Phoenix seems dead set on acquiring him. Again, they don't have the pieces 1-to-1, so they're going to need to bring in a third team, whether that's a Utah Jazz or a Detroit Pistons. I saw some theory that you send Bradley Beal to Detroit, and Detroit sends pieces to Miami, and Miami sends Jimmy to Phoenix. I don't know how it all works, but he will get moved. And I think he makes wherever he goes better. I don't think he goes to a team where he wins a title.
He could go to a team that wins a title. I mean, if he went to Oklahoma City, they could win.
Yeah, but I don't think that type of team is going to trade for him. Cleveland's not going to trade for him. Boston doesn't trade for him.
If he's the missing piece for Memphis.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I don't know if they're going to be able to get Memphis or Golden State are the two teams that could most likely win a title by bringing in Jimmy, and I don't know if he ends up there.
But here's the problem: is Miami wants something back. Like they want players back.
Yeah, and rightfully so.
Because they're not going to punt on Tyler Hero and Bam. So they want. I mean, what players are you sending back? And none of those teams you're talking about want to send a player back. I mean, who would Miami ask Memphis for? Jaren Jackson? They're not doing that.
No
way.
No, of course no. They would get like
Desmond Bain.
Marcus
they wouldn't do that
Smart.
either. I don't
know
think.
if they would do Desmond. Yeah, right. Marcus Smart and like Jalen Wells, who's their rookie, who's really good, but is a second-round pick, so he doesn't make any money. And a couple for future firsts.
Why would Miami do that?
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's not enough. Unless you were going to get like a bunch of firsts. But again, a first-round draft pick that isn't in the lottery just doesn't have actually all that much value.
But Miami wants to win. I mean, I guess Pat Riley, being Pat Riley, could flip those picks for something that could possibly help them right away. But the Miami team without Jimmy Butler ain't going anywhere.
I will also say this, and I picked this up on Saturday because I'm always looking at Twitter during the games and seeing what other fan bases are saying. There's a lot of people who think Pat Riley's just kind of been sitting on his duff for a while.
See, I don't buy that. That was Locke's big argument, is that you would have to buy that Pat Riley was asleep at the switch, which I actually don't buy that either. That's what I'd buy into Locke's. Maybe the trade market isn't great. Because, listen, you don't pass on an extension with a guy like that and then think he's going to be on your team long term. That's just not how the NBA works.
Yeah.
So you pass on the extension, you don't come to an agreement, and then you move them as soon as you can.
I just think it's really hard to make trades with the new tax aprons. If you're over the tax, you can't. If you're over the first apron, it has to be $1 for $1 that you get back or less. But yeah, you can't trade for more. It's just really hard to make moves in today's NBA, and that's going to hurt Jimmy Butler's trade value.
All right, stay tuned. We'll talk more Jazz basketball coming up next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.